right, just before we get into the big conversation around the nation's economy, well, the former vice president and former presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, had released a statement through his media aide. It was a quote of some of the things he said about this government, how he's not sure that this government is able to handle hunger and all of that. Then inflation figures came out yesterday. But the interesting thing about the figures is that, you know, they've since been rebased. So you can't really compare what we have now to maybe last year when it was in 30s and say it has reduced. It was really just rebased. So it's a different methodology that is being used. But what is the reality really? Because when you do the math, sometimes you realize that we've not really gone that far. It's just the numbers that look different. But in reality, things are just basically slowing down. But let's, before that, give you an advisory, particularly if you're in Lagos State. Today, obviously, is a rainy day. So if you are not out yet, please get ready for the rains. Get your umbrella. The rains are good until it catches you unaware or unprepared, and you do not want to be in that situation. So plan your movement, because there will definitely be traffic in the usual hotspots. So if you do not have to go out, stay back, work from home. Well, I'm not the person you should quote when you're mailing HR and saying, I can't make it to work today. But if you have enough reason not to go out, kindly stay back so we don't have all of the traffic jam-packed and the gridlock, and then you don't regret it at the end of the day and maybe catch a cold. So that's an advisory for people living in Lagos. The temperature is about 24 degrees. It is raining, so please be prepared. We had our own fair taste of the rain this morning. Bukola had to say it is raining mangoes. I've never seen that before.
Well, the advisory is not just for Lagos residents, if you're in Ogun State as well, particularly if you travel along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, heading towards Lagos. On your right-hand side of the expressway, particularly when you approach the Long Bridge, you may want to slow down and practice extreme caution as you drive because of the flooded right-hand side of the bridge, you know, that pretty much splashes water and affects your windscreen. So, and you know, customarily, visibility is poor whenever it rains. So you may want to, you know, check your vehicles and be extremely cautious. Drive to stay alive. Yeah, that's it for Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
I like that, drive to stay alive. But I must say that I love the way the sun rose in spite of the rain.
Yeah,
it was really beautiful. That video was done by Jeffrey, by the way. That's a work of art. You can see the sun in spite of the rain. So it gave the weather, or the atmosphere, a different color tone. And I must say it was beautiful to see. But while we are admiring the weather, let us talk about the economy. Yes, we could talk about the weather all day, but let us talk about the economic weather this morning. As we said earlier on, latest inflation figures have been released. It is 20.12 now for the previous month. But what does that mean for you in the context of the price of items and the market, the things that the presidential candidate of the PDP in 2023 had to say? That's Mr. Atiku Abubakar. We were joined by Dr. Tope Fasua on the program this morning. He's an aide to President Bola Tinubu, whom, of course, we expect later today. Special advisor on economic affairs to President Tinubu joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Dr. Fasua. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the invite.
Well, it's good to have you on the program. So we're checking in on the economic weather. Usually when the inflation figures come out, people use it to gauge how far we have gone, how good we're doing. 20.12 from the 21.88 that we had in the previous month. Clearly, that is a drop. But there's the usual conversation around how much that is really impacting on the people. Because what you see in that figure is just the rate at which prices are increasing. It has since slowed down. So it doesn't mean a drastic drop in price. It just means that we're not driving fast towards high prices as we used to in previous times. And when you compare it to what we had last year, it's really just rebased, because we were 30 plus last year. So it's been rebased, the methodology is different, the food basket is smaller than it used to be. right? That's why we have the figures that we have right now. But I wanted to just juxtapose this with the statement made by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, saying that, well, the government may not agree with it, but people are dying daily of hunger. And even the ones alive are finding it really tough. Mr. Fasua.
Well, thank you very much. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has only made a political statement, and of course, maybe that's to be expected in this season, because he's trying to see how he can wangle his way back into presidency. You know, well, I don't comment much on political things, but it's what it is. He doesn't have to commend the present government for his achievements, but at least sometimes the rest of us, we need to just stick to the black and white, to the empirical evidence on ground. 20.12% inflation, yeah, it's still large in many quarters, because what it's saying is that prices are still increasing, but not at the rate that it used to increase in the past. It's not even just a matter of rebasing. The rebasing came in about 6 years after it ought to have been done. You know, and I think our concern should be that our statistics and data should be much more on point and much more frequent. Because without data, data is the center of everything in today's information age, post-industrial age. You know, so the rebasing was done, and it actually gave us the true picture of where we were. You know, so for any emotional reason, if somebody believes that no, we should still be around 30% of inflation and all of that, well, that's their own cup of tea. The bottom line is that a rebasing has been done several months back, and what we have seen since then is consistent drop in inflation. I've always told anybody that cared to listen, you know, inflation does not increase forever, not in any country. We have Ghana next to us here. They had inflation up to 40%, 42%. Today, the inflation is trending down to single digit. Nigeria's inflation will get to single digit as well, a matter of time. Pakistan, an economy that actually mirrors Nigeria's economy a lot, got inflation up to 40% about 2 years ago. Today, they're actually battling with deflation, which is even a bigger issue, because there's no incentive for people to produce more goods and to push themselves, you know, so everything like goes down south. Nigeria's inflation is certainly going to single digit, and that's not the only index that we can see. Yesterday, the Naira closed, Naira traded at some point at 1,497 Naira to the dollar. For the first time in more than perhaps 8 months, we actually clocked the 1,400 region. And that's remarkable. And of course, when you look at why is inflation reducing, if anybody that cares to know, of course, food is one of our key drivers of inflation. Exchange rate is also another key driver of inflation. Exchange rate has stabilized and is actually strengthening via market forces without anybody trying to dictate where the rate should go. And food prices are also going down. In fact, I ran into a certain gentleman called African Farmer Mogaji, who is someone I respect in the agri space. And I mean, he knows a lot about things like tomatoes and so on. And for the first time, like he told me, for the first time in 26 years, this year we did not have that usual ruckus around tomato prices soaring and all between May, June, July. We've had quite a bit of stability there. So food prices are dropping. In fact, you know, some farmers in some quarters are saying, oh, why is the government is crashing food prices because they want to make it affect them negatively. I mean, the majority of Nigerians, including these farmers, are enjoying the fact that food prices are more stable and, I mean, lower, because no farmer produces all the food that he needs. You can only produce some part of the food that you need. So there's been strategic decisions taken, including things like the temporary ban on shea nuts, which our local industries need. You know, so like cashew nut export, you know, I think that one is in the offing. Shea nut export for 6 months has been actually pronounced and so on. You know, but this actually focuses on building this economy from the ground up, you know, and I think that's what we should be looking at, building we're digging the roots. Like I would always make, example of the Chinese bamboo tree. You plant and you wet it for 5 years and you think nothing is going to happen. When it starts to grow at maybe 5 meters every day, and then you may not even be able to control it. So I think that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration and under his guidance, and all the people that are running the economy, the coordinating minister, the vice president, and every other juggernaut that's actually running this economy, we seem to be getting it right. And I think that unfortunately for opposition, they just have to swallow the bitter pill, that it's going to be very tough for them to continue marketing the bad economy thing, minding the fact that part of what we're managing is also what we inherited from the past administration, especially the post-COVID issues that actually affected every country.
Dr. Fasua, well said. Well, I'm not going to argue with the number because I will respect the figures. So I must commend the numbers as far as I've looked at the numbers from January, the rebase numbers coming to maybe is almost 5% for maybe the headline, and then about slightly over 4% for food inflation. So that is commendable. The argument is about the lived-in reality of people. The macroeconomic numbers, I've also seen some of them. They are in the right direction as far as the macroeconomics is concerned. But it's the lived-in reality. I also do not entirely agree with some of the classification that was done by the MBS, but that's what we have when they redistributed the weightage and increased some numbers. I do not agree entirely with it. But as I said, that is what we have. And to the issue of the dollar against the Naira, there's also an explainer, the explainer of the fact that we're also happy that the fiscal authority, the monetary authority has been focused on their job. But if you look at from what has happened from the FOMC in America to the NFP numbers, to the CPI numbers, to the PPI numbers, to numbers that are expected coming up, I think, in 2 days' time when Fed is expected to either go dovish, hold, but most people expect a rate cut. The dollar is taking a beating, so naturally the Naira will be strengthened. I just need to put that perspective. But let's talk about whether Nigeria is really prepared, or we're properly prepared for the capitalist economy this government is building. Do you think we were?
Well, well, let me put it this way. As an economist and one that is engaged in continuous research, I would always try to tell people that, listen, the isms are dead. America is supposed to be the biggest capitalist country in the world, but they have some of the biggest social protection, in the world as well. I mean, Britain is known to be a bit of a socialist country. The Scandinavian countries are running social democracy. China itself is meant to be a communist country, but they are as capitalist as can be. So everybody, every growing economy in the world and every progressive economy is mixing and matching. So it's mix and match. Take the best from capitalism, take the best from wherever socialism, communism, whatever works, and move on. And knowing your people and knowing the needs of your people. Nigeria is not necessarily a fully capitalist country. We know where we're coming from, but of course, some of the tenets of capitalism does work, like entrepreneurship, making sure that people produce and move on, and ensuring that we don't dig our heads in the sand while the world passes us by. So you can see, and going back to the some of the issues that you raised, first of all about the MBS. Oh, come on, Jeff, the MBS has only increased the basket of goods that they track on the CPI, the composite purchasing index, so the inflation numbers, they've only increased it from 700 plus to 960. I think that's commendable because the world is changing. Economy is dynamic, and there are many goods that people get involved in as the world gets more sophisticated. I mean, in 1960, there were many things that were being enjoyed abroad that Nigerians didn't know about. This is 2025, and now everybody is on the internet. We see what's going on. And you said the categorization, for example, the reduction of the power of food. I mean, listen, about 20 years ago, people didn't even buy things like data. Do you know that people who buy data now at the expense of everything else? Some people even starve themselves just because they want to have data. Now, you mentioned the lived experiences. I think it was Kade that mentioned lived experiences. Yes, it is true, but I mean, how do you argue lived experiences when food prices are dropping? You know, and again, so when food prices are dropping, it affects everybody. The key thing about poverty is once you can solve food poverty, you are on your way to somewhere. And if food prices are dropping, I think we should. I mean, some farmers are complaining that, oh, they'd rather export all their food and make dollars. The problem with that is it's a great idea, but many of the times we don't even get the export proceeds coming back into this country. They hold those export proceeds abroad. They tell you, you know what, they have things to import. They're going to use it to import things. So everybody, a lot of people have been playing tricks on the country. And I want you to look at the trade numbers as well. In the last quarter, Q2, we actually had trade surpluses of about 7 trillion. In the whole of 2024, the commendable trade balances we had was about 15 trillion. But in one quarter, we had 7 trillion. Maybe this year we're going to close at over 20 trillion or 25 trillion of trade balances. In fact, I read another article somewhere that Nigeria actually had the highest trade balance, according to Business Day, the highest trade balance in surplus balance in Africa. The trade surplus in Africa, you know, and that's commendable. So a lot of things are working. Like I said, we're digging roots. So it's not just trying to play politics with numbers or juggling numbers. This is real. And I think that everybody should take note of that. So the lived experience, of course, in every country there are poor people. In Nigeria, there are a lot of poor people who can be helped. The last time the humanitarian minister did disclose that they have spent about 420 billion on cash transfers. You know, great stuff. Cash transfer for those who are really, really vulnerable, who can't help themselves. They exist in every country, but the focus of this government is actually on productivity, which needs to go up. So it's about productivity, it's about increasing the GDP per capita and making sure that everybody actually contributes to the bottom line. So I think there are many positives, from trade to inflation, to the Naira value. You mentioned the Naira value. It's not just that the US dollar is taking a bit of a beating right now. The point is also that we have we have about $42 billion in reserves. And of course, we have positive trade balances, which may result in a positive balance of payment, balance for the year as well, in a very good way. I mean, this is real re-engineering of the economy that we're seeing. And in fact, manufacturing exports grew by about 64% year on year, and from one quarter to the other grew at 173%. Manufacturing goods exports from Nigeria, according to the last trade balance, trade figures that were released, I think, on Friday last week into Monday this week. So I think we have a lot of things to be cheerful about, really, if you ask me.
Thank you, Dr. Fasua. Now let's look at these positive indicators as against what's on ground in terms of the realities. First of all, perhaps we should put it in proper perspective. If I sit here as a representative of those who go to the markets, it may not be accurate to say that food prices have crashed. Maybe there's a gradual decline when you consider the price of staples, bag of rice, vegetable cooking oil for vegetable, palm oil. The prices as against what obtained, some months back have not crashed. Maybe they're declining. But let's look at those indicators as against what's on ground. The federal government says that the reserves have increased. You quoted $42 billion, but the speaker not too long ago spoke about the concern of Nigeria's burgeoning debt, 149 trillion naira, and warned that this is particularly not good for fiscal stability. When you consider the positive economic indicators as against concerns about federal workers, NASU is on strike, the doctors are complaining, then what's the justification for more borrowing without it translating into better fortunes for government's workforce?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I also go into the market myself. I mean, that's the kind of life I live, So it's not just you that go into the market. You just try to state things in your own words, So we are all in the market together. And of course, yes, some of the prices have crashed. Even when the temporary ban on shea nuts came out, that led to a reduction in that price by 30%. and that's significant, you know. And she not, it's not only for cosmetics, it also goes into food in this country and beyond. It even goes into some of the chocolate products, as it were, you know. So regarding, now you now dovetailed into the issue of borrowing. Okay, first of all, at 39% of GDP, Nigeria is actually under borrowed if we use that index. Of course, even regarding you know, debt servicing to revenue, the last number I got last month was 64%. You know, in 2022, there was a point in time when that number went to 120%, when we used all our revenues to service debt and then had to borrow 20% extra just to pay that same debt servicing. So indeed, our debt management is not too bad. I think that we're doing a good job in the area of debt management, if you ask me. The states were able, for one reason or the other, to pay down 42% of their debts between 2023 and 2024. 42% of the debts of the states disappeared. You know, so listen, a country is run like a company. A company that's thriving, let's call it a conglomerate, that's a large company, is not thinking about how to pay down debt. You service debt, you pay down some, you take new ones, because you're growing and you want to expand your horizon and your capacity in the global market. You have to go into more productivity, and you know that may necessitate you taking on some more debt. Of course, I welcome the criticisms in terms of maybe looking at, oh, what is our priority? What kind of debt should we be taking? What rates should we be looking at? Who should we be taking the debts from? How are we managing the debts? Are we ensuring that the money is actually going to what they are meant for? Are those debts project tied? And you know, is that cash flow related that can bring in the money to service the debt, if not to repay everything? But look, Nigeria has a huge lacuna of infrastructural needs. We need about 3 trillion or more every year, maybe about $3 trillion to actually begin to make an impact on our infrastructure. We have rail to build, we have roads to build. Even the arterial roads that are coming up in Nigeria, Lagos, Calabar, Lagos, Badagry, Sokoto, and there's even another one that should be between Maiduguri and Sokoto and Co, and another from Calabar to Maiduguri to cover this country. All of those things are very important infrastructure that should come. And of course, we still have a lot of maintenance work to do on a lot of the infrastructure we have built. One of the things I've been writing on, I think I wrote about that last week in Premium Times, and a few other, I think the cable as well, you know, is the centrality of infrastructure towards reducing multi-dimensional poverty. Multi-dimensional poverty is defined as, you know, non-income poverty, right, and poverty relating to the availability of infrastructure, basic infrastructure. Therefore, the only way you can reduce multi-dimensional is to fund infrastructure, whether it's roads, bridges, power infrastructure, including renewable energy, right, even things like water and all the things that people need, schools, right, education, that's health, and so, you know, so that's very important for us to do. And unfortunately, we haven't actually updated the multidimensional poverty data since 2022.
Well, it'll be good to see.
Done every 6 months, if you ask me. You know, so by now I think we've taken quite a number of people out of multi-dimension. We're not 133. From my own calculation, about 10 million people have been positively impacted. Maybe we should be talking about 120 million or even a lot less.
Well, Mr. Fasua, some may even say we've done 50 million, but we need to see the data. And I'm glad you mentioned that there is no data to back this out yet. Back this up, rather. We need that data. On a final note, there's something being described as money illusion. So for the states, for example, FAC, or the allocation has increased to 7 trillion from the 1+ trillion it was in 2016. Now, 2016, the Naira dollar was less than 300. Now it's 1.5. So when you see that it's increased, and even the president says we have increased allocation to states, so please wet the grass more. People get a sense that, oh, there's more money, but in actual terms, when you look at it deeper, it's less, and that's converting it to dollars, because we know that there's still a lot of dependence on these things. Even people who are earning wages, the minimum wage, for example, in those terms is less than what it is. So I'd like you to speak to this money illusion, because the government usually touts this as a win. But in the real sense of it, it's not a win when you look at the full picture.
No, well, thank you very much. Money illusion is a concept a well-known concept in economics, maybe you're having a high velocity of money without actually being able to purchase as much as you can. However, in this instance, it's not just like that. It's not, it doesn't work fully well. Why? Because of one critical thing. The prices of factors of production have not increased at the same rate as the depreciation in the value of the Naira. So if you had 100,000 Naira today, whereas it may not be able to buy you what 100,000 will buy 2-3 years ago, it can still take you some way. Because, for example, the price of labor has actually not increased commensurately. For example, so those who are in the construction world are still able to do a lot more with the Naira that they have. This is a Naira economy, not a dollar economy. Therefore, it doesn't actually work, scientifically and logically for us to just simply convert the money into dollar and say, oh, look at it where the dollar is. Nigeria is still a very cheap country to live in. Nigeria is cheaper. People who have gone to Ghana and come back, and I've done that a few times in the past, will tell you there's a lot, the Naira goes a lot farther than the Ghanaian cedi and so on. Of course, the Naira goes a lot farther in Nigeria, and I've made that analysis several times. Sometimes it's been very heavily criticized, but it is what it is. It's scientific that the Naira can do a whole lot for you in Nigeria than it would for you in... The other time I even did an analysis, looking at rentals in the UK. For a 3-bedroom flat in Knightsbridge, you probably would need about 10,000 pounds every month. That's a lot of money. But even in our most expensive place in Banana Island, it's a lot less. You may be like a third of the money. And that is what we mean, that, in Naira, if you're trading in Naira and you're in Nigeria, you do a lot more with your Naira than you would in many of these other countries that we cannot. Therefore, I don't want us to let that be a get-out-of-jail-free card, especially for the state governments. Because some of them, I've heard some of the governors say, oh, yes, we are getting this money, but in dollar terms. No, it's not dollar terms, it's Naira. First of all, the first charge on your money is to pay your staff, and and of course, many of the state governors have been magnanimous enough. They are paying even a higher minimum wage than the federal. Some of them are paying. In fact, one of them, I think, is Imo State or so, increased to 120,000. In Lagos State, there is 100,000 for minimum wage, because they also are aware that, look, there's a need to do something because the value of the Naira depreciated a few years ago. So, but there's a lot that can be done apart from paying salaries, doing infrastructure work, which impacts directly on multi-dimensional poverty, little infrastructure, road work and all of that, that's the next level, and that's what many of them already have started to do. I think we're going to see an explosion of those little infrastructure developments in Nigeria, because the factors of production, the cost of price, the price of price have not increased. Some of them have not increased at the same rate as the Naira has devalued. So we can't be talking about money illusion here. It's not just that simple.
You talked about, states prioritizing workers and, paying them increased minimum wage. What about federal workers? I thought you were going to address that. Despite increased borrowing, it's either the doctors are complaining that the federal government is not prioritizing their welfare, or it's NASU or some other federal workers who are being owed salaries. So if we're borrowing more, why is government prioritizing infrastructure development above human capital development?
No. Well, from what I know, the first charge on any money, whether at the federal or state level, is the human capital. You have to pay your people. As far as I know, the federal is not owing any major parastatal that I'm aware of. Maybe there may be labor disputes in 1 or 2 places. The doctors are asking for more money, okay, and the doctors are not on minimum wage, So the focus in the first part of the 2 years was on minimum wage, and we need to understand that minimum wage is actually for the lowest of the low. Well, the government felt that, look, 35,000 wasn't enough. There was some bargaining and all of that. Even though some of the labor people are now saying, 70,000 is too low. The federal government has committed to 70,000 at its own level, and from what I know so far, and I keep doing my research, the federal government is sticking to that, and the federal government is paying as and when due. There may be a few parastatals that have 1 or 2 issues here and there, but the federal government is paying salaries as and when due. You may talk about other issues, maybe what they call consequential adjustments across the board. In fact, I raised this issue with the head of service a few weeks ago, and she also assured me that all of that had been taken care of, the consequential adjustment across the board for even from director to deputy director, assistant director, and so on. So it is untrue to say that the federal government is not prioritizing human capital. The federal government is, actually.
Well, the federal government is still owing wage awards, is also owing the outstanding.
Some of those.
So just to be clear that there's still money being owed, and we see federal government as a continuum. But we have to thank you so much. We're not able to get into what the Naira can do and what it cannot do. That itself is a whole conversation. But we'll have you back because we need to also look at the reality between these figures. Because one thing we do sometimes is put the figures out there, because there's a lot people can't really think beyond that. But let's help them also situate those issues. But we have to thank you so much, Dr. Tope Fasua, aide to President Bola Tinubu. I know the president is coming back today, so there's a lot of work to be done with his team. So we wish you the very best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we're also counting down to September the 18th, because that's when it's expected that that state of emergency in River State would be lifted. But what exactly are the state of things, and does that look feasible now? We'll find out in a moment. Stay with us.